All right, here we go. This is Jordan, not a tame sheep, with the Black Sheep Theology Network, and today we're talking to Brad Nelson of Walking the Text. So welcome in, Brad, and why
Hello.
don't you start out by telling us just a little bit about what Walking the Text is?
Yeah, Walking the Text it's a 501c3 organization, but we exist to help people learn to read the Bible with clarity and confidence. One of the things that we hear most often from people is they're overwhelmed and they're confused by the Bible. And so, over the years, as we have introduced people, whether it's through study trips to Bible lands or teaching series, podcasts like the ones that you do, we're introducing people to the original context of the Bible. And for so many folks, that original context seems to be the key that unlocks a new relationship with the Bible and helps people to read with clarity and confidence. And the most satisfying thing for me is to see people who have heard a story 100 times encounter that same story as if they've encountered it for the first time. And that is just, and it's like that for it's like that for us as we're creating, whether it's the study trips or the podcast episodes. That's how it is for us, and so it's just fun to be able to do that with other people.
And that exactly describes what happened to me with the teaching series episode on the feeding of the 5,000.
Yeah.
Where yeah, Brad Gray was talking about, this is like Moses, and man, he related it all back to the Old Testament. And it was like one thing after another. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
wow, wow. Oh man, it
Yeah,
was
it really
fantastic.
can feel like once you start to see the depth of interconnection between all these texts, I mean, it's staggering.
It
Um,
is.
and that's where what I delight in so much is when I first started doing this kind of work, even just as a pastor 20 years ago. I remember when I first started to realize that, wait a second, if you understand history and culture, that just alone opens up whole new vistas and background on the text. I mean, I've been a pastor for 3 or 4 years before someone pointed out, or it even occurred to me, that Jesus was actually Jewish, and that might have some bearing on how we read him and make sense of his life. Um, but what has been really fun doing this work with Walking the Text is to see you start to seep into the geography and the geographical background, and just how much gets unlocked in a text when you read with a map nearby. I mean, that alone is mind-blowing. And then, of course, I I liked seminary. I'm a nerd. I'm a theology nerd, probably like you. Um, I could have taken or leaving most of my seminary classes, but the languages, oh my goodness, the languages were worth every penny. And so learning to read the text from this linguistic perspective and start to wrestle with and understand some of the Hebrew background of words and the Greek background of words is just really, really beautiful.
Yeah. So you and I met, man, it seems like it's been a couple decades in Grand
Yeah.
Rapids, Michigan, and you went off to Florida. So how did you end up? I mean, did you know Brad Gray while you were in Michigan, or did you kind of tell us how
Yeah.
you got into?
Yeah, so Brad and I met as freshmen in college at Cornerstone University. He
Oh wow,
was a basketball player. He's originally from Adrian, Michigan, and I was a soccer player. I was born in Flint, and we met in preseason there and became fast friends. And almost immediately, I had never met another person my age who was trying to become the same kind of person that I was trying to become. And it was the first time that I had ever felt like a real iron sharpening iron. Like, man, when I'm with this person, like, I want to be a better person. And I can tell that that is true in reverse. And so we I think we even like started a Bible study together in college. And so we were doing this, back in 1999, back in the 1900s. So we've been doing this for a little bit. Um, but funny thing was, I went right into pastoring. Brad went into the business world, and then Brad had like this kind of lightning bolt call to ministry, and he got introduced to like the history, the culture, the geography of the Bible. And I got a call from him one day, and he just said, "Hey, do you know any books about like the Bible's context?" And so I responded back with like 10 books, and he bought them all, and was like, "Oh my gosh, this is mind blowing." And then fast forward like 6 months, he quits his job, goes to seminary. Next thing you know, he's moving to over to Israel to live and study at Jerusalem University College, and starts leading trips to Israel. And then 5 years ago, he launched Walking the Text. And Walking the Text right now is located in out of Nashville, Tennessee. But he started that 5 years ago, and that's kind of been his life's work. And I have really been a part of Walking the Text from the beginning. Both Brad and I, from the time that we started preaching and teaching, back in 2002, 2003, we would get together in a room in my basement. You know this room because
Yeah, I do.
um, we called it the lab. There was a group of us, and anytime one of us was going to be teaching somewhere, we would get together and talk theology and build the teachings in community, and then beat them up and rebuild them and scrutinize them. And so when Brad launched Walking the Text, he would call me, and we would do these lab sessions over the phone. And then in 2017, he invited me to be a part of the faculty for the Infusion Bible Conference, which is a 3-day experience that we create to help train people in how to read the Bible in its context. And so we, each year we choose a different topic. This last year we did John, his life, legacy, and last words, and looked at John's gospel, the epistles, and Revelation. And but I came on staff a year ago, but we've been doing this work for 10 years and always just kind of dreaming for a way that we could do it together. And so finally worked out.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Man, I didn't know that you were there at the beginning. It was kind of like, hey, I'm moving down south and I'm going to start doing these videos. And, man, we loved it. I didn't know that you were, in the background like that. But
Oh yeah. Yeah.
when Keegan went to Turkey, somehow he got on your trip. So it was
Yep.
Brad and Brad. And man, we were so jealous. So jealous. He got to go with both of you guys.
Have you been to Turkey?
I haven't been to Turkey. No.
Oh man, you got to do. I love Israel. Israel is a must, but Turkey as a study trip, the way that Greco-Roman culture shapes and forms and is the bedrock for our Western culture, it's unbelievable. And there's something about that Turkey trip and the sites that you're at, going out to all the 7 churches, being in a lot of the places where Paul was ministering. It really hits home in a way that Israel, it's not the same. And, the Romans knew you got to kind of play nice with the Jews because they'll go to war, and did a couple of times. So the kind of Roman influence that you see at the sites in Israel is more understated. But when you go into Asia Minor, present day Turkey, man, that was a place that was full blown. We are currying favor with Rome. And so you just see massive ruins, and you see Roman culture on display in a way that you just don't find in the land of Israel.
Wow. So you're going to be leading trips now?
Yeah.
With
So
Walking the Text?
Yep, through Walking the Text. We have, over the last couple of years, obviously slowed down trips due to COVID, But now that things have opened back up, we've got a waiting list, and as we create more and more experiences, it just gets harder and harder to be away from your family for 2 weeks at a
Yeah.
time. So, one of the reasons Brad initially even reached out to me to have me come on full time was he just said, I need somebody else to lead trips, and you're one of the only people that I would trust with Walking the Text's name and brand and our mission and who we are. And so I think over the next 2 years, I've got at least 3 trips planned to Israel, and then spent about 5 weeks there this last summer doing some coursework at Jerusalem University College, which was fantastic.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, I was in Malta and
Okay.
I saw there's like a little um I don't know, shrine or statue or whatever on the island where Paul was supposed to have landed, and it
Yeah.
was interesting to be in different places of the island and see all of the influence of
Yeah.
Paul on that island. And then
One
the
of
city of Medina, we were in that city, and that's what the city looked like when Paul was there. So that was really neat.
Yeah, that's cool. We One of our partners that we have made over the years at Walking the Text is a guy named Dr. Randall Smith, and he is like a longtime trip leader. He probably leads 30 to 40 trips a year. But he's a walking, talking Bible encyclopedia of knowledge. And I'm always kind of trying to turn people on to his stuff. So he actually has a YouTube channel called 1 Hour, One Book. Um,
Okay. Yeah,
and
Brad, I've heard. Yeah.
yeah, anytime that I'm studying something, I'm 1 hour, one book on YouTube. I just want to see, uh, as a forensic archaeologist, what is his background on this text, and it's usually really fantastic. I mean, he's got little nuggets that I read all the sources. I've got a whole office full of books that I've spent thousands of dollars on, and you can't find a lot of the stuff that he's saying in books. Um, because it's conversations that he's had with actual people in the land.
Oh, wow. So, like, there's so much stuff that we're talking about. It's almost like overwhelming. So, if you've never heard of Walking the Text, and this is like, your first introduction to it, um, how should somebody get started? What's the best way? And, how do you like baby step into this?
Yeah. Well, the fastest thing, I think, and the most helpful thing is to go to the website and download an ebook. So we created a short, it's like 30 pages ebook called The Number One Mistake Most Everyone Makes When Reading the Bible. And it's sort of a tongue-in-cheek title. That mistake is obviously that people don't read the Bible in its context. And so when you read something out of context, man, there's just room for all kinds of trouble and confusion. And so what the ebook does is it kind of lays out a framework for what it looks like to begin to understand the Bible in its original context, and walks through these 6 lenses of context. So you've got historical, cultural, geographical, visual, linguistic, and literary. And another organization that I'm sure you're probably familiar with, who they do a lot of those 6 lenses, but they're really focused on the literary context, is the Bible Project.
Yeah.
And so they're fantastic, have a lot of great resources. But that ebook is just a really helpful tool that you can download and start to kind of get handles for how do you start to understand the text and context. And I especially have found this to be really helpful for pastors who are wanting to deepen and enrich their own study. A lot of times the most terrifying thing is a blank page. And so it's like, how do I start with something other than a blank page? And if you start to come at any text that you might be studying and start to ask some of these questions, what's the history? What's the cultural stuff going on in the background? Are there any key words here that I need to know about? What does this place look like? I mean, that alone can be a really, really helpful thing. Where's this happening on a map? What else has happened here before? What kind of genre is this? Usually, by the time you get done looking through a framework like that, you've got way more to work with than you ever would have imagined. So that ebook, it's 30 pages long. It's a really, really helpful place to start. And then, we have the teaching series, which is a video teaching series, but it's also available on podcast because most people like to, they like to watch, but a lot of people are listening while they're in the car or on a run and just prefer to listen instead. So the teaching series, it's every other week. And typically we are tackling a new text or a new mini series, and we'll go through and put those texts in their context and kind of just model for people, hey, here's what it looks like to chew on the Bible with these 6 lenses of context.
Yeah, I have lost track of how many times somebody's asked me a question and I've just run through there, found an episode and sent it to them.
Yeah,
It's just, yeah, it's so awesome. And then I know I've had people say to me, I want to watch a church online because I'm going to be on vacation or, whatever. I'm moving and I don't, and I'm just like, man, teaching series. Here's episode 1. They build on each other. Just start here.
Yeah.
It's
That's
been an
great.
awesome resource. Yeah, it's funny. They'll come out and I'll watch it at work, and then my wife watches it, and it's like, oh, I guess I know what we're talking about tonight over dinner.
Right.
So yeah, those have been huge blessing. So
That's great to
and
hear.
then I know Vicky my wife went to the first couple of conferences.
Yep.
And then you renamed it. So
Yeah, it
I
started
know
out,
the name changed.
yeah, it started out as the Institute of Biblical Context, and it was a conference that Brad started in partnership with a guy named Doug Greenwald. And Doug Greenwald was, I think he's from out west somewhere, like Arizona, but similar to like Ray Vander Laan on the West Coast. Doug had an organization called Preserving Bible Times that was, for the last 30 years has been looking at the text in context and creating all kinds of resources and experiences. And there's not a ton out there in the world of context. So Brad and Doug met and they thought, let's put this conference together. And then tragically, a couple of years ago, Doug passed away from cancer.
Oh.
And so Brad and Walking the Text have kind of taken ownership of that conference, and we've renamed it the Infusion Bible Conference. But we're still close with Doug's widow, Nancy. His wife, Nancy, is such a sweet woman. And Preserving Bible Times is always usually a part of the IBC, the Infusion Bible Conference.
So do you know the topic for the next IBC or?
I don't yet. And I want to be really careful not to say more than I ought. But I will tell you, we have for a couple of years now been kicking around the prophets is something that we've wanted to dive into. But then, we are getting ready to launch a mini series on the characters of Christmas. And one of the things that we're finding as we get into this is there's so much disagreement in the sources about the Christmas story. And so I think it would be fun also to do a whole conference on Christmas in context. So we'll see. I don't know.
Okay. So what's the video series and what's available to watch and what's coming?
Yeah. So with the video series, are you talking about the teaching series?
No, have you put that out now?
The Sacred Thread?
Yes. Yeah. That.
Yeah. So, gosh, this was probably 4 years ago. We had a strategic planning meeting to ask, what are the things that we would need to do to reach more people? with this message of the text in context. And one of the things that we talked about at that time was, man, it would really seem like a film project would be something that could be really helpful for people. And so it was just something we kind of tabbed in our mind. And then the pandemic hit and everything got canceled and everything got shut down. And it was like, well, maybe now would be the time for us to start working on that. So we put some ideas together and started, shopping those ideas with some friends of ours, and ended up connecting with um, our creative director has a friend who is a senior producer at ESPN, and just ran our script idea past him. And the guy's a follower of Jesus, and he said, "Man, this is fantastic. I I think I know a production company that you need to talk to." And turns out that production company was 10 miles away from where Brad had relocated in Nashville. Not only was Evolve Studios 10 miles away from where Brad was at, the owner and founder of Evolve Studios relocated from New York City to Nashville to help launch the Church of the City in Franklin, Tennessee, which is where Brad and his wife Shallon attend, and where Brad is on their teaching faculty. And so the pastor of the church is a guy named Darren. Darren and Brad were talking one day, and he was asking Brad, what have you been up to? And Brad was telling him about the film project and about this production company that they had just learned about in Franklin. And he's like, yeah, we're having a conversation with them next week. And Darren just started laughing and said, hey, Joel, the owner of Evolve Studios, is one of my closest friends. I'm going over to his house tonight. I'm going to pitch him the project.
Wow.
And unbeknownst to us, while Darren is on the way over to Joel's house, our friend, the senior producer at ESPN, called Joel, pitched him the project. So he got pitched twice in one night. And it's just been really fun. One of the downsides that we hear pretty regularly with any kind of media that gets produced in the Christian world is that it can often feel like it's second rate, that it's not done as well.
Easy. Yeah, it can be.
It's so unfortunate, right? Because it's the most explosive story in the world. It is the greatest story ever told, and it deserves to be told as such. And the crazy thing about Evolve Studios is that most of their senior leadership are devoted followers of Jesus. And they're also 6-time Emmy winners with like 50 different nominations. And they're so excited about the project and have helped us. We've now written season 1. We have filmed episode 1 and are in the process right now of fundraising to go ahead and in the next year, after January sometime, to schedule our filming trip to start working on episodes 2 through 7. And season 1 is going to be on the Lord's Prayer. So kind of line by line, phrase by phrase, 7 episodes long, going through the Lord's Prayer, putting it in its context, but doing it on site, right? So following all those interconnected pieces of the text. But now you're in Egypt, now you're in Israel, now you're in Jordan. And man, it is so visually stunning. And actually, if people want to watch the trailer and the first episode, you can go to thesacredthread.tv and you can sign up there at the website to watch the first episode.
Okay. Wow. Well, I have to do that. I told you beforehand, I like to wait for the whole thing to come out, but now that you've explained it, I guess I'll go watch that.
Yeah. Well, and here's the other thing I'll say is 4 years ago, it was just an idea of how could we get more people connected to this thought of reading the text in context. What we had no clue about is how serious this would become. So Evolve Studios is one of the top vendors for Netflix. And so, I mean, they are going to be putting us in touch with Netflix, National Geographic, um, Apple TV, Google Play. I mean, and that's just an American domestic audience. We're working right now on all kinds of interesting implications for a global audience. So it's just through God's grace become way, way bigger than we ever could have imagined.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Wow. You're on an exciting trip, brother.
It is so fun. I mean, I have to keep pinching myself,
Yeah.
but it's also a lot of work. You know, we were talking before we started recording, like creating content constantly is a
Yeah,
grind.
it
But
is.
here's the great thing. There are a lot of chapters in the Bible. So we've got a lot to work with.
Yeah, there sure is. So, is there any other aspect of the Walking the Text site that you can think of that people should be sure to check out? So the book and then the teaching series to get started.
The
The
book, the
Sacred
teaching
Thread.
series, the Sacred Thread. You know, I would really strongly encourage people to, you know, if they can, check out the Infusion Bible Conference.
Yep.
That is a really, really unique conference and experience. And, you know, like I said, I've been doing this for over 20 years. And like 2 years ago, preparing for, we did the IBC was on Paul and his Greco-Roman world. So is a deep dive on the Greco-Roman background of the New Testament. And of course, I'm up till, 2 a.m. reading Ovid and all kinds of obscure sources.
Right.
But man, I have never learned so much. And that is the thing that I enjoy most about IBC is that it's just like a playground. There's no end to all of the new and interesting things that you can learn about the text. So Infusion Bible Conference, I would say, is a big one.
Okay. So, man, I really appreciate your time. And I kind of wanted to keep this short to,
Sure.
to get people introduced to Walking the Text because, man, I've watched every episode. I know I've watched a lot of them more than once. I've watched at least some of the Bible conference.
Yeah.
I haven't, and I've looked through the materials. I didn't get to go, but I did watch some of them. And Keegan's been on one of your trips, and I almost went this last year to Israel. The military shot down Keegan's leave.
Oh,
They
yes.
said he couldn't. They said he couldn't leave the States because of COVID. So we ended up. I mean, we had paid, and everything. We were all set to go, and then the military, shot it down. So
Yeah.
we're gonna be trying again. So
Yep.
um,
Yep. Well,
it's
I
not
will. I
good
will
news
just
on the
say,
waiting list.
yeah. Well, and it's now that there are two of us doing it, like our capacity's expanded. So,
Yeah.
if you need to get on a trip, I know a guy.
Right.
The other thing I would just say, in light of what you just said about the Infusion Bible Conference, is we spend 1,500, 2,000 hours prepping the 50 some teachings, and we do like a guide of meticulous notes, footnotes. And what we've heard from people is that notebook alone is worth the price of the conference. It just saves people the time to go hunting down these obscure books, and some
Yeah,
of
all
them
that
are
stuff
super
themselves.
expensive. I mean, I had a book 2 years ago that I was thinking of purchasing, and I looked it up on Amazon. It's $756. I thought, I'll just stick with the quote.
Yeah. Yeah, Brad Gray recommended the NT Wright book, and I'm halfway through that.
Which one?
the New Testament and its world.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, halfway through that, really enjoy it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a compliment. So,
Nice.
all right. Compliments what, I mean, it's Brad and Brad. So, I keep just wanted to say Brad, but,
Right.
um,
Brad the
yeah.
bald, Brad the haired.
All right. So let me turn this off a second.